With great respect for each of you who listens now, I want to speak today about something that at first glance may seem simple but holds a deep spiritual truth: the plants around you. Perhaps in the hurried pace of daily life, few pause to observe how their plants are doing, yet they speak to us, not with words, but through their living presence or their silent absence. When we enter a space where the plants are green, firm, and flowering, even if we cannot explain why, we feel something different. A lightness, a clarity, as if the environment itself were breathing. But when the plants wilt, dry up, or perish without apparent cause, it is not a trivial detail. It is a signal, a reflection of something deeper that relates to the life forces present in that place and also within ourselves. In my journey of investigating the human being, nature, and spirit, I have understood that everything that lives is immersed in a field of vital forces. We cannot see these forces with ordinary eyes, yet they sustain every form of life. I have called them life forces or formative forces, and they maintain balance both in our bodies and in nature. You might imagine it this way: just as we have a physical body made of matter, we also have a body of living forces that shapes us, preserves health, and organizes the subtlest processes. The same applies to plants. They do not grow only because of water, light, and soil. They grow because they are in harmony with a larger field, an invisible network of energies and rhythms that come from the cosmos itself. Now observe carefully. When someone lives in inner disorder, when their life rhythms break down, for example, by sleeping and waking at chaotic times, or by carrying feelings of constant anxiety or anger, this state does not affect only the body. It also reflects in the environment. You can perceive that reflection in the plants that share your space. If you notice that your home's plants often fail to thrive even though they receive water and light, do not blame the plant or the soil first. Ask yourself, how is my own life rhythm? How is my inner state? Is the space where I live in harmony or in constant turmoil? Plants are silent beings yet highly sensitive. They live connected to the subtle forces that flow through us all. When the human environment loses its balance, plants sense it. They warn us without fanfare, simply by ceasing to flourish. That is why I say that learning to care for plants is not merely an exercise in gardening or decoration. It is an exercise in awareness. It is a call to observe how you relate to the invisible, to rhythm, to silence, and to life itself. And now I ask you, who listen, in your home, do your plants bloom or wilt? When you observe them calmly, do you feel they are telling you something about your inner condition? Be honest with yourself and allow this reflection to become the first step toward a deeper change, both in your external environment and in your inner world. With serenity, I wish today to share an essential idea for anyone seeking to understand not only what is visible, but also what sustains life itself behind appearances. When you observe a plant, an animal, or even a human being, the common gaze sees only the physical body, that which has form, weight, and substance. Yet true life does not reside in that visible body. True life pulses in something more subtle, more delicate, made not of matter. This is what I call vital forces. Allow me to explain simply. Just as a clock requires an invisible mechanism to move its hands, every living being requires invisible forces that maintain its growth, its rhythm, and its form. These forces do not come from within the physical body, but surround it and flow through it. In the language I developed in my spiritual studies, I named this the etheric body. The etheric body is, so to speak, a second body that every living being possesses. It consists entirely of life forces. We cannot touch it, yet it is what causes a seed to germinate, a child to grow, or a cut in our skin to heal naturally. The forces of the etheric body organize everything we call health and balance. It is the etheric body that silently shapes each leaf of a plant, every strand of hair, each heartbeat. When these forces are in harmony, both the plant and the human display clear signs. There is vitality, growth, and order. But when these forces are weakened or disordered, all living things begin to lose their form. The plant wilts, the human falls ill, the environment becomes heavy, lacking freshness and rhythm. You can sense this by observing calmly. There are places where plants bloom effortlessly, where everything seems alive and vibrant. And there are places where, no matter how much one plants, the leaves will not thrive. The air feels denser and less clear. This is not mere chance. It reflects the quality of the etheric forces circulating there. Understand this. Not only material factors such as water or light determine whether something will live. There is always that invisible layer of life forces sustaining everything. And to keep these forces healthy, it is necessary to cultivate not only external habits but also an inner state of balance. When we live with excessive haste, uncontrolled emotions, or fragmented thoughts, we also affect those forces. This reverberates not only within us but throughout our surroundings. Therefore, caring for the environment, for the rhythm of the day, and for the presence of plants around us is not a superficial detail. It is a way of nourishing and strengthening the field of vital forces that upholds the order of life. Now I ask you who listen, when you look at your home, your garden, or your workspace, Do you perceive that vitality, that invisible presence of order and harmony? Or are there signs of disorder and weakness in both yourself and in the plants and environment? I invite you to observe with greater attention. The etheric body is not reserved for philosophical study. It lives in every leaf, in every breath, and in every everyday gesture. May we learn to care better for these forces, beginning with what surrounds us and also what lives within our own interior. When we observe the world around us, we often regard plants as something separate from ourselves, as mere decorations, food, or part of the scenery. But I tell you that this is not the true reality. There exists, in a very concrete and living way, a deep interaction between human beings and the plant world, even if ordinary eyes do not perceive it immediately. Plants, like us, live sustained by forces that are not visible. They grow, bloom, and wilt, according to laws that go beyond what we can measure with physical instruments alone. And we, as human beings, also carry these same forces within us, which maintain our balance and health. In my work, I have called them vital forces, or the etheric body. Here lies the essential point. The vital forces of plants and the vital forces of human beings are always in relation. They do not belong to two separate worlds, but to a single field of life, where what happens to one directly reflects in the other. When a person enters a space filled with many plants, their own body is nourished by the order and harmony that those plants radiate. Plants do more than produce oxygen or fragrance. They organize around them a field of forces that brings calm, rhythm, and clarity. Likewise, when a human environment is in disorder, when there is excessive agitation, noise, or uncontrolled emotions, this directly affects the plants. Often, they begin to wilt or fall ill for no apparent reason. This is not mere chance. It is a reflection of a living interaction between what we are and what plants are. In fact, plants act as silent mirrors. They do not judge, speak, or accuse. They simply show, through their vitality or weakness, the quality of the environment they inhabit, and by extension, the state of vital forces in those who share that space. Through my spiritual research, I have come to understand that human beings bear a far greater responsibility toward nature than they imagine. Every thought, every feeling, and every action creates invisible waves that touch not only other people, but also the beings of the plant world. If someone lives constantly in disordered thoughts or negative emotions, that state creates a kind of disharmony around them that plants absorb sensitively. Conversely, when someone cultivates a state of inner calm, gratitude, and conscious presence, this strengthens the environment and helps plants grow more healthily. That is why I say that caring for plants is not merely a practical task, it is a spiritual exercise. By watering them, pruning them with attention, and observing their growth, we also care for something within ourselves. This simple gesture reconnects us with larger rhythms, with the order of life that transcends the immediate and places us in a broader cycle. I invite you to reflect. How are the plants in your environment? Do they live in harmony, or do they show signs of fatigue and imbalance? And have you paused to notice whether their condition in some way reflects your own inner state? Observe with calm and without hurry, and let this silent interaction with the plant world bring you not only exterior beauty, but also a call to care more consciously for your inner life. For at the deepest level, we are all part of the same great living organism. When we look at a plant that is unwell, with wilted, faded, or dry leaves, we often immediately consider external causes. Maybe it lacks water, perhaps the soil is poor, or the sunlight is too strong or too weak. These observations, of course, make sense, but today, I invite you to look a little beyond the obvious. With the eyes of the soul, the question I pose is this: could it be that behind a sick plant there lies also a reflection of something deeper, something that comes from the human being and the environment they create? I tell you that it is true. There is indeed a direct relationship between the health of a plant and the inner state of the person who shares space with it. Throughout my life, I have studied what I call vital forces. These are subtle energies that sustain every form of life, from a single leaf to the human being. These forces determine not only the physical appearance of living things, but also their true vitality. They do not remain confined to isolated bodies. They flow through everything that lives, forming an invisible web that connects plants, animals, and ourselves. When a human being lives in harmony, with calm feelings, ordered thoughts, and balanced daily rhythms, these vital forces flow freely and healthily. This benefits not only the person, but also the surroundings, reaching even the plants that grow in their home, garden, or workspace. However, when inner disorder arises, when a person is dominated by constant worries, feelings of anguish, or a life without rhythm or rest, that disorder also affects the vital forces circulating around them. Plants, by their silent and sensitive nature, are the first to detect that imbalance. They do not act with their own will or react like human beings, but they passively absorb the conditions of their environment. Over time, what is disordered in the human soul can weaken plants, making them more fragile and more susceptible to disease. I am not saying that every sick plant is an automatic sign of a disturbed soul. That would be an exaggeration. But I affirm based on spiritual observation, that there is a deeper connection than we usually admit. A garden where inner disorder reigns will sooner or later show that in its leaves, flowers, and fruit. This does not mean that we should fear or blame ourselves. On the contrary, it presents an opportunity for awareness. If we notice that the plants around us fall ill frequently, despite proper material care, we should ask ourselves how our own inner life is faring. Have we cultivated moments of silence, rest, and contemplation? Or do we live at such a rapid pace that we neglect to care for what cannot be seen? This is the key. Caring for plants is also caring for ourselves. By harmonizing our thoughts, ordering our feelings, and establishing healthy rhythms of sleep, nourishment, work, and rest, we strengthen not only our body but also the invisible environment in which plants grow. Therefore, I say to you, observe your plants with affection. They are not merely beings that serve us or decorate our surroundings. They are living mirrors that reflect our relationship with the invisible. And now I leave you with a simple question. When you look at the plants in your environment, do you perceive in them a reflection of order and vitality? Or do they show you, in their silence, that perhaps something within you needs renewal? May that question accompany you, not with haste, but with the serene rhythm that nature itself teaches us. I would like to speak with you about something that, at first glance, seems like a simple everyday gesture, but that, when viewed more deeply, reveals itself as a true spiritual exercise. Caring for plants. In my spiritual observations, it has always been clear to me that everything that lives carries forces within that are not merely physical. Just as human beings possess, beyond the body, something more, the soul. The spirit plants are also connected to an invisible network of vital forces that keep them alive and in balance. I have called these forces formative forces or life forces. When a plant grows, blooms, and remains healthy, it is not only because it receives water or light. Those are certainly necessary. But there is something more subtle that sustains its growth, a harmony present in its environment, and above all, a conscious presence in the one who cares for it. Therefore, I say calmly that caring for plants is not merely a practical activity. It is a way of tuning our own soul to the silent laws of nature. When we water a plant, prune it attentively, or observe its leaves, its color, and its form, we are simultaneously training within ourselves the capacity to observe and to listen to what is not spoken in words. In Anthroposophy, we always seek to unite the spiritual with the practical. Spirituality should not exist apart from daily life. On the contrary, it must express itself in small gestures in daily habits. Caring for a plant thus becomes a path to inner development. When we approach a plant with genuine attention, calm, and rhythm, we also bring order to our own vital field, our body of living forces, the etheric body, which often becomes disorganized because of haste, excessive worries, or lack of pause. I invite you to experience this consciously. Do not care for plants only when you have extra time. Make it a special moment of the day. Look at them in silence. Note whether their leaves are healthy, whether they need water, light, or pruning, and while you perform these tasks, also try to listen to yourself, asking, how is my inner rhythm? How are my thoughts, my feelings, my own balance? This is the true exercise, transforming the care of plants into self-care. In the act of watering, pruning, and cleaning, we also learn to water, prune, and clean what lives within us, our disordered feelings and our thoughts that at times become heavy or confused. There is one more detail I consider important: the rhythm. In nature, everything lives in cycles and rhythms, day and night, the seasons' growth and decline. When we care for plants regularly, when we respect the right time to water, to prune, and to wait for blooms, we align ourselves with those greater rhythms that sustain life. This strengthens not only the environment around us, but also our own soul. That is why I affirm that caring for plants is a concrete spiritual practice. It is a path accessible to everyone regardless of age, circumstance, or location. It can be done in silence without complicated words or external rituals, only with presence, attention, and respect. Now I leave you with a question to reflect on calmly. What would your life be like if every day you set aside a few minutes to care for a plant with true awareness? What kind of inner change could occur simply through this small gesture, repeated with love and attention? May this reflection accompany you, and may it open new ways to live more attentively, more connected to the subtle forces that sustain both plants and the human soul. When we speak of balance in life, many first think of material balance, keeping the house tidy, maintaining a healthy body, and keeping tasks in order. Today, however, I invite you to reflect on a more subtle, deeper kind of balance. The balance of etheric forces, the life forces that sustain everything that grows, blooms, and remains alive in this world. In my studies and observations, I have understood that life is not maintained by material substances alone. There is something invisible that works silently yet essentially. These are the etheric forces. They are like a vital breath that animates plants, animals, and human beings alike. These forces do not act in a chaotic or disordered way. They always follow a rhythm. This is the point I wish to draw your attention to: the relationship between rhythm, environment, and the balance of etheric forces. Observe nature calmly. Sunrise and sunset follow an exact rhythm. The tides, the moon's phases, the seasons all move in precise cycles. A plant grows according to its own rhythm. It does not bloom before its time, nor does it retreat too soon. This respect for rhythms is not a trivial detail. It is what maintains the balance of etheric forces in all beings. When rhythm is broken, life forces become disorganized. Wherever these forces are out of order, disease, weakness, and imbalance appear. In human beings, this sensitivity is even greater. When a person lives without rhythm, sleeping and waking at always different times, eating irregularly, working without breaks, or resting excessively, their etheric forces fall out of balance. Often this is felt as unexplained fatigue, a lack of inner clarity, or a sense of discouragement. This imbalance does not appear only in our bodies. It shows up in our surroundings. Plants that share our space also detect this disorder. They sense whether the rhythm of the person caring for them is harmonious or confused. A home filled with constant agitation, noise, and lights on late into the night is a home in which etheric forces can hardly find peace. That is why I speak of the importance of consciously cultivating rhythms in your life. This does not mean living by rigid rules. It means observing the natural flow of day and night, activity and rest, and creating for yourself fixed moments of silence, nourishment, and attention to your surroundings. This strengthens not only the physical body but also the etheric body. Caring for your environment is part of this process. Organizing your home, tending your plants, and paying attention to small details all help to create a space in which life forces can flow in order, bringing well-being not only to the people who live there but to every living thing in that place. I tell you that just as a plant needs light and shade, water, and a pause between waterings, so do we human beings need this balance. The soul feels at ease when there is rhythm. The spirit manifests more clearly when the body and environment offer a field of harmony. Now, I ask, how is the rhythm in your life? Do you respect pauses, silence, moments of rest and activity? Does your environment convey order, or are there signs of disharmony around you, in yourself, in your plants, objects, and living spaces? May this reflection help you gradually adjust the rhythm of your life to the great rhythm of the cosmos, learning from nature to live with greater balance, clarity, and inner peace. For where there is rhythm, there is true life. Throughout my life and in the work I have developed, I have always sought to unite what is visible to the eyes with what lies beyond appearances, in the realm of the invisible and the spiritual. Many ask me from time to time, what did you really mean when you spoke about plants, about vital forces, about the environment in which we live? Today, I want to answer this clearly and simply so that everyone can understand, even those who have never heard of Anthroposophy. When I spoke of vital forces, I was referring to what keeps all living things in balance. It is not enough to look only at the external form of a plant, a human being, or an animal. True life is not just the body. There is something behind it that sustains growth, flowering, and health. I called this the etheric body, the body made of life forces. In many of my lecture cycles, especially in the books and conferences now collected in the so-called Geismtausgabe, particularly volumes 312, 348, and 350. I spoke about this explicitly. I would say, for example, a plant does not live only on light and water. It lives because it is immersed in a field of cosmic and earthly forces. This means there is a constant connection between heaven and earth, between what is in the cosmos and what takes root in the soil. Furthermore, I always warn that human beings also directly influence this field of forces. The way we live, feel, and think acts not only upon ourselves but also upon everything around us. I used to say, human beings carry the responsibility to organize not only their own inner life but also the spiritual order of their environment. When I spoke about agriculture, what is now called biodynamic agriculture, I explained that planting and caring for the soil is not merely a technical act. It is a spiritual task. The basic guidance was always, cultivate the earth, respecting cosmic rhythms, and you collaborate with the order of the world. And regarding the care of plants in the home environment, I advise that maintaining healthy plants at home is not just a matter of aesthetics or decoration. It reflects the state of the vital forces present. Wherever disorder reigns, where the rhythms of sleep, nourishment, and activity are broken, plants sense and reflect that. In one of my lectures I recorded, the place in which a human being dwells must be seen as a living organism. Everything that lives within it, including plants, participates in the same rhythm, in the same balance. Therefore, I always recommend observing your own environment with greater attention. Look at plants not merely as objects but as silent companions that show through their physical condition what we may not yet perceive in ourselves. Conscious care for plants, for the space, for the rhythm of daily life, is a way to put into practice what I called spiritual science. There is no need for elaborate rituals. Simply bring order, attention, inner silence, and genuine presence to the simplest gestures of the day. And now I leave you with a reflection I have always considered essential. When you look around in your home, in your garden, in your workplace, do you feel a field of living, ordered forces? Or do you perceive signs of disorder, neglect, or carelessness? May each of you observe honestly and, little by little, adjust your own life, bringing more balance not only to yourself, but to the entire environment that surrounds you. For, as I always said, human beings are not separate from the world. They are themselves world builders. As we reach the end of this conversation, I would like to leave you with one final image. Something simple, yet capable of transforming the way each of you views the world. Nature as a mirror of the soul. Throughout my life, I have sought to show that human beings are not isolated. There is no true separation between what happens within us and what manifests around us. When we look at a tree, a plant, a garden, or the rhythm of the seasons, we are not merely facing something external. We are, in fact, witnessing reflections of what lives in our own soul. Have you noticed how, on days when the heart feels light, even the leaves appear greener? And conversely, when we carry anguish or inner disorder, even the most beautiful flowers can seem dull and lifeless. This is not just an impression. There is a real correspondence between the order of nature and the order of the human soul. The etheric forces I described act both in the body and in the environment. But beyond that, nature constantly offers us silent signals about our own inner state. A plant that blooms or that withers, a tree that stands strong or that loses its leaves too soon, a field that yields abundantly or one that becomes barren. Each of these can be seen as images revealing something about the human being. This does not mean that we must lose ourselves in exaggerated interpretations, always searching for a hidden meaning in every detail. But it does mean that we can cultivate a more attentive, more conscious gaze. A gaze that seeks in nature's simplicity a reflection to understand ourselves more deeply. In my lectures and writings, I always asserted, human beings must learn to read nature as an open book. Every leaf, every flower, every breeze can be read as a page on which the deepest laws of life are written. The same applies to the plants in our home and garden. When we care for them with presence, attention, and respect, we are at the same time caring for something within ourselves, our rhythm, our balance, and our ability to hear silence and live more harmoniously. Therefore, I invite each of you to practice, starting today, a very simple exercise. Look at the nature around you every day, even if only for a few minutes. Observe the plants that accompany you, the cycles of the moon, the changes in the sky, and the trees along the street. And as you observe, ask yourself, what does what I see now tell me about my own inner state? Do I feel harmony within, or do I sense disorder? Am I in tune with the rhythm of life, or am I moving against what is natural? These questions do not require immediate answers. They serve to open a space of awareness within us, and it is in that space that the true spiritual path begins, not separated from the world, but in full union with it. Always remember, caring for nature and observing its laws and rhythms is caring for yourself. Deep down, there is no division between what lies outside and what lives within. Nature is, and always will be, a living mirror of the human soul. May each of you carry this image with you and gradually transform it into living practice. In this way, with simple yet conscious gestures, we will build together a path of greater balance, greater truth, and greater peace between the human being and the world that surrounds them.